Okay, everybody. I don't think you need any introduction anymore, but Dale Stevenson is now going to give us the benefit of some more experiences. Okay,
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thank you very much for having me along these last couple of days. It's been a real honour to get invited over for this, and to be fair, even if I wasn't presenting, I would have considered doing the 30-hour travel back and forth from New Zealand to come and attend. So it's a real privilege and a pleasure, and look forward to sharing the next hour or so with you and trying to tell a little bit of our story. My preference is, as we go along, if you have questions, rather than me present for 55 minutes and then ask if there are any questions, if something comes up for you along the way, just call it out, throw your hand up. That's my preference of how we do things, so don't be shy. For those of you who I haven't met, as Peter said, my name is Dale Stevenson. I'm the head throws coach of Athletics New Zealand. And probably similar to a lot of you in the room sitting here yesterday listening to Renee present, there's some differences in New Zealand to how we do things, to how things are running in the UK or in Germany. New Zealand's a small country, 4 million people, but we won 4 medals in Rio, which is a big achievement for our country. Athletics, it's a fairly buoyant time for athletics in New Zealand at the moment. There's a lot of good things happening, and it's a real honour to be involved there. That's enough of that. Ever since I was a kid, I've been infatuated by martial arts. In fact, recently after retiring, I retired in 2012, played rugby for a while, got a bit out of shape, and decided that I wanted to do something. So I've taken up Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I've very much caught the bug. So I'm now training 4 or 5 times a week in Jiu-Jitsu. And if you ever want to deepen your appreciation for the physical aspects of what those guys do, I'd encourage you to try that. It'll blow your mind. Very humbling. Bruce Lee is probably getting more and more quoted these days, all of his little axioms, but one of his mantras rings true for me, and when I started coaching, I really sort of tried to anchor this into my consciousness. This is how I want, this is how I see throwing, this is how I like to think about it, and this little mantra still resonates. Learn the principle, apply the principle, resolve the principle. So I've sort of structured today's chat in those 3 subcategories, and thanks to Bruce for providing that for me. Has anyone seen this graph before? Any ideas? There's a prize. You can get what it is. Weights of shot? Not quite. It's not the weights of shot. Call it out. Go on, have a guess. No wrong answers. Say again, sorry? Shockwave? No, it's not a seismic graph of activity in New Zealand. It could be. This is on this axis here is your percentage chance of getting parole, and this axis here is the time of day. What are the dotted lines? The meals. So this was a study done in Argentina, and you can see we've just had morning tea. I'm presenting here. I'll try and get through it as well as I can before we drop down in how we proceed that. So good luck to whoever's presenting after me, when everyone's scratching the ball up. We've got Sunday afternoon, the final session, there'll be a few glazed eyes. Tor, I'll just point this at you if you fall asleep. Let's kick it off. My first one is an acknowledgement. I started working with Tom unofficially in about 2010 when I was still throwing. This man here is a man called Ian Baird. Ian was Tom's childhood coach from when he was 8 years old in his hometown of Timaru, a small agricultural rural town in New Zealand. And Ian's still in Timaru coaching kids. If he were there right now, he'd probably be at the track coaching 5 to 12-year-olds. It reached a point where Ian actually approached me and said, I need some help. I can't give the energy that Tom needs now. And we made that transition over a couple of years. But I always try to start with this because what Ian did is more important to Tom's progress than what I've done. Ian laid the foundation, and we need to acknowledge these coaches. In fact, the coaches' medals that we were kindly given in London, I gave mine to Ian. That's us there after Tom won in London in August. I actually didn't know Ian was in London. He doesn't usually travel. He's now closing in on 80. He's got 2 bad hips, and he didn't come to Rio. I thought he said his days of travelling are probably done. Anyway, unbeknownst to me, Tom's parents arranged to fly Ian over to be in London, got him some accommodation, and we finished media, drug testing, the whole rigmarole, and we decided it would be remiss of us not to go for a celebratory beverage. So we found our way down to the local establishment, and Ian was there. This is about 2:30 in the morning after a fairly long day, and there was no one at that time who I would have rather had a beer with than Ian. We all started somewhere. This is a young Dale Stevenson, the earliest recording of me throwing. The lady in the red is my nan. It's primary school sports. I don't know why. I don't know how it came about. Maybe some glitch in the cosmos, but I love throwing. I especially love shot put. I've cried in the last probably 15 years, 20 years of my life. I've cried 4 times. One of them was at my wedding, and the other 3 were related to shot put. One when I qualified for the Olympics, one after Tom won a bronze in Rio, and one after World Champs. It elicits an emotional response to me that pretty much nothing else does. And looking around the room, there's a lot of people here who've probably had similar experiences. I don't know what it is. I can't trace the heritage, but I just care about it. I think it's a good way to meet people. It's a good way to learn about yourself. And probably started somewhere here. In retrospect, though, could use a little bit more lift from the left side. And that right foot's pretty passive for me to get work on that. This is Tom. As I said, Tom's story is different to mine. I'm Australian by birth. Tom's a Kiwi. He's from a fairly humble farming family, and grew up playing lots of sports as kids in our corner of the world do. We all play cricket, we play rugby. Shot put was just one of those sports, and Tom didn't take the shot put. Tom only stopped playing cricket when he was 19. He's now 25, so early specialisation's not as much of an issue in New Zealand and Australia as it is in other parts of the world, just because it's the normal thing to do. You play sports when they're in season and don't when you don't. This is a picture of Tom trying to eat 8 burritos folded into one burrito. I just like that photo. This is me trying to eat 8 burritos folded into one burrito. I'm a primary school teacher by trade. I was teaching for a couple of years before I took up coaching. I never thought I'd get into coaching. I fell into it. And my real passion was in teaching. And I miss it. Tom and I, our relationship is pretty unique. We started off as competitors. Tom's about 8 years, not quite, 5, 6 years younger than me. So at the tail end of my career, he was coming through, and there aren't many rotational shot putters or shot putters in general coming from our little quadrant of the universe. So I felt a sense of responsibility for the people who looked after me. Gary Nose up the back, Scott Martin, Justin Anlazark. There's only really 2 or 3 throwers from our country, and if we just leave the sport and don't give anything back, then no one else gets anything, and we've got to start that cycle again. So I felt a sense of responsibility to pass it on, and we've now got, I think, in the top 12 in the world, I think there's 6 or 7 in men's shot from Commonwealth countries, which is exciting for us, and a lot of it's due to that continuation of the intellectual property and the passion about the sport. Tom came over, and after I retired, he was staying at my house 3-4 times a year. He'd come for a month, we'd train, and I'd help him out a little bit, just because there was no one else really in proximity. We'd have to come to Europe or spend, we didn't have the money to go to Europe all the time or to come to the US and learn. He paid me back by helping me build my deck at the back of my house. So this is a photo from 2013 of Tom and I doing our little training camp. And for the record, I won the burrito eating challenge. When I took up coaching, there was I read a lot. It's one of the things I like to do with my time. And I read this story, and it was about Vikings. And the fable goes that when they would sail into enemy territory, the first thing they'd do, they'd pull up on the shore in their longboats, get off their boats, stand on the beach, and they'd set their boats on fire behind them. They would burn their boat. And that was an affirmation to them and to their opposition that they were all in. They were either going home in your boats or they weren't going home. And I like that analogy. I talked with that about Tom, and what would this look like for throwing? If we were all in and we didn't have any excuses, we burned our boats, what could we do? Cool story. We need to turn the camera around. I needed to look at myself. I can't just be coach, directing athlete. Because I was a young coach when I started with Tom, only in 2014, unofficially for 3-4 years before that. I needed to look at myself because I wasn't in a position of expertise. I didn't have a whole heritage of 20, 30, 40, 50 years of experience like many of you in the room do. So I was in no position to be authoritarian in the way we were operating. I needed to look at what Tom was doing. I also needed to look at what I was doing. I needed to study myself. How was I making decisions? Was it based on tradition and what I'd been taught? Am I willing to question that? Can I change my beliefs? I need to set a compass. Where do we want to go? What is this going to look like? What does it look like for a thrower from New Zealand to throw whatever distance? Because it looks different to what a thrower from the UK looks like. It looks different to what a thrower from Germany or the US looks like. We need to find our way. Now we need to adopt a growth mindset. As soon as we get emotionally attached to what we're doing, overly emotionally attached, put our egos in the way, we compromise our ability to solve the problem. And the problem is, how do we find more tape? What are the rules of that for us? And again, this is just conversations with Tom, how we came about all this. Hand up, not hand out. One of the best things that happened for me was having time away from the sport. And you realise working with kids, working with other sports, other sectors, private sector, whatever it is, there is a woe is me mentality in athletics. I've been guilty of it in the past, and a lot of us have, of not complaining, but there's finger pointing or talking behind someone's back. They're getting this, we're not getting anything. If only we lived in Germany, the German system's so good, we don't, we live in New Zealand. We weren't going to deal with that. We just thought, let's wipe the slate clean and deal with it. Hand up, not hand out. It's not a sacrifice, it's a privilege. What we do every day is a privilege. There are people stacking shelves at Tesco's who would kill for the opportunity to engage in sport, even if it was just a couple of nights a week, right, coaching. But they can't because they don't have the financial means. They've got to work 2 jobs. They're a single parent. They're whatever they are. Just keeping it in perspective. And we won't tolerate negativity in ourselves or others. So we have a rule that if I'm being negative, Tom should be able to call me out. Anyone in our team can call me out, and I can call them out. That goes both ways. We had a major earthquake in Christchurch in 2011. We don't have a track. We still don't have a track. So there is not an athletics track. The longest straight of artificial surface we have is 60 metres. We were training at primary schools after hours because that's the only way we could get to a shot put circle. In 2015, started 2015, it's only 2 years before the Olympics. Thinking about it, that was something we needed to fix. We needed to be able to train when we wanted to train, but we didn't have a place to do it. So we found this little sliver of land. This is our training facility here. It's a big tin shed that was put up in 2012. There's literally just rubber matting inside and some gym equipment. This is a public pool on this side. This is a water slide and an ice cream truck. And this is only about 2/3 the width of a normal sector. But we walked out there and said, okay, could we build a shot sector here? Let's speak to the council. We have to get around this drain. We plotted it out, got our spray cans out, went to the council, got a sponsor, and for 4,000 New Zealand dollars we managed to excavate it, pour it. We were out there ourselves, put the Rio in. That's Tom drilling the stopboard in himself. And then we trained. And we still train there today. So we look at facilities like you've got here in Loughborough. Man, it'd be nice to have that. It'd be great to have that. But we actually don't need it. This does the job for us. And it's probably more poignant to us because we built it ourselves. How do you know what you don't? I was picking Vern's brain last night about how Vern's been coaching for nigh on 50 years. I've been coaching for 3.5 professionally. How can I know now what I wish I'd known in 50 years' time? How can I accelerate that process? And there really is no way. Time's going to run its course. But self-awareness is a big thing. It's a big thing for athletes. Some of you might have used this. This is a quadrant analysis. You get athletes to graph, or you get people to graph various characteristics. I'm sorry about the colours. How important is it, and how good am I at it? You can use this for anything. Use it for how important is aerobic endurance as a javelin thrower. All right, you might say, well, I've actually got pretty good aerobic endurance, but it's not important, and I'll put it over here. So the way we do that is I'll give that to an athlete. I come up with all the metrics. They plot it on, I plot it on, and we use it as a debrief and a discussion tool. So if they say, well, I'm actually really good at recovery, but I say, you're actually not so good at recovery, but it is important, then we have a discussion. And vice versa. If they think strength's really important, I'm okay at it, but it's 10 out of 10 important, and I say strength's 1 out of 10 important, then we have a discussion. I also did this for myself as a coach. Came up with a whole bunch of metrics, got people I respected to plot how good am I at self-awareness, how good am I at patience, how good am I at empathy, how good am I at communication, how good am I at organisation. All of the skills plotted, and some stuff was highlighted for me. I'm quite creative, I've got a lot of good ideas, but they whirl around in my head. I'm not good at getting them on paper. I'm not good at communicating them a lot of the time. In summary, for us, everything's on the table. We can discuss anything. Nothing's sacred. In our reviews, I talk with Tom openly, and he talks with me about family. Tom's got a girlfriend of a couple of years. I've got a wife. We've got full encouragement to talk about that with each other. How is my relationship with my wife impacting on Tom's performance? Because it does. It does. If I'm not happy, I can't coach well. If I can't come away to things like this because things aren't good on the home front, then that's a problem. We talk about it. And that goes both ways. Another comment to that, we spend 4 to 5 months a year away. Tom spends 5 to 6 months a year away from home, away from New Zealand. You can't compete on the Diamond League circuit, make a living from the sport, do what we need to do, based out of Christchurch in May to October, or May to September. So we base ourselves in the States. Again, not a sacrifice, it's a privilege. You just do it. You have to do it. So we don't complain about that. There's full license for bi-directional challenge. I can challenge Tom, Tom can challenge me. In fact, it should be both ways. We respect our heritage and where we're from, but we're not bound by it. There's ideas, certain pervasive ideas in our part of the world, and in all parts of the world, that you can't do this from here, or you can't do whatever, you should be doing this. We're proud of where we came from and where we come from, but not limited by it. Out of that little quadrant analysis, it became quite apparent that the best thing I could do to contribute to Tom's performance was ask really good questions, not necessarily answer them. There's a lot of information out there these days. There's people I can ring up. I'd like to think I could get in touch with anyone in this room, by email, phone, whatever, Skype, and ask. And you guys have more information perhaps than I do. But I need to be able to ask the right questions. And we need to build a great team with low amounts of ego. It's amazing what you can do when no one cares who gets the credit. Any questions so far? So quiet. Learn the principle, apply the principle. What is throwing? Is it a physical expression? Is it strength plus speed equals blah blah blah? Maybe. Is it a beauty contest? This person looks like they should throw far. We've all been subject to that. It's a competitive sport, to a degree. We have championships, we use rankings, we measure, we compare. Primal struggle. Anyone who was at the clinic on Friday afternoon with Amelia, the shot putter for, it's probably a primal struggle for Amelia, right? But she's all in, it's wrestling with her consciousness about how to get this implement to go further, challenging herself. She's very much probably in this space. Is it a means of validation? My athlete did well, so I feel good. I threw far, so I'm a good person. Question that. I've had to keep that front of mind recently. Tom had a good year, right? Threw well, won the world championships, but it doesn't make us good people. Being good people makes us good people. I see throwing is a skill. Alex's presentation really resonated with me. Perhaps it's because I'm from a teaching background. That's the way I like to think about it. Like what Tor was saying too, around this is how I view the event. It's not the only way, but it's how I like to think about it. Well, if it's a skill, what do we need to know? Has anyone who in the room has had any kind of teacher training? Got to be a few, yeah. You know the Dreyfus brothers? Dreyfus curve. When we're a novice, first time, you're learning something, you need routines, you need structure. As we get better at that skill, we reach a level of proficiency, competence, we need less structure. We make decisions based more off feel, based off prior perceived knowledge. When you first learn to swing a golf club, you need instruction. When you're Phil Mickelson, you've been playing on the Pro Tour for 30 years, he probably doesn't even need a yardage. He rocks up to his ball, looks at the flag, and he's absorbing all of this information. What's the wind doing? Where do I want to miss? Where can I not afford to go? What's the ball going to do in the air? 7-iron, full hit it. No worries. He's making decisions based contextually, not structurally. I think this applies to throwing. In fact, I'm pretty certain. My 4 principles, not the 4 principles. There's an important difference. Part movements are only as useful as their contribution to full movements. I don't care how good your standing throw is, unless it's helping your full throw. I only care as much as it helps your full throw. I need to be able to calibrate how much I care about those things. Minimum effective dose. And we only do as few of those things as we need to go to the next thing. We don't measure standing throws, we don't measure half turns, we don't even do standing throws. Don't measure half turns, don't measure South Africans, we barely even measure full throws. It only matters what the contribution is to performance. Movements are more important than positions. Thanks, Alex. Credit you for that one. Although I already had it, so if I was presenting first, it'd be my idea. We don't look at throws. In the last 6 years, Tom and I have probably looked at, if you tallied up the total time we've spent looking at footage of throws, somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes, I'd say.
Is that footage of him throwing?
Footage of Tom throwing, yeah. Yeah. Part of that's due to the fact that we always watch it in full speed. Not always, we do sometimes pause, check, rewind, whatever, but we don't, especially Tom. Tom doesn't look at anything in slow-mo, doesn't look at anything in freeze frame, because you can't see rhythm in freeze frame. In fact, I'd rather see the video with volume on. Can I hear it? What's the tempo like?
So where do drills fit in?
Where do drills fit in? Drills fit in to enhance rhythm and tempo.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not like you don't use drills, but they're very directed. And
Yeah, I need to prove to myself why we would use that drill. I was chatting with Zolt at morning tea about the same thing with hammer, even in a gym setting. That's not void of rhythm. In fact, we should be able to amplify that. Throw starts at the start. Where does a shot put throw start? To me, it starts at the back of the ring. Why don't we start at the back of the ring? When we teach it now in New Zealand, we have conferences like this for throws coaches in New Zealand, except in New Zealand it's 6 people over there, so it's usually sitting in a circle. And you know, someone will rock up in their rugby shorts that come up from Southland, the bottom of New Zealand, and they're sitting there. Yeah, how's it going? Very different flavour to this kind of occasion. And we no longer teach in New Zealand standing throws for rotational shot put. When we get kids 7, 8, 10, 12, 15 years old, if it's the first time they're throwing, get them with a shot, just get them walking, turning and throwing. That's how we start. The throw starts at the back, not at the front. That's my philosophy. I know there's different arguments around. It's not, yeah. The first word here is key. This is just my thoughts. The execution won't always be perfect, but the intention must be. We go through fatigue, different phases of training, travel, jet lag, you name it, whatever it is. Not every throw is going to be perfect because there's certain physiological variables that we have to deal with, but the intention should be. There's no excuse for not being clear with what we're working on. There's no excuse for not being mentally attuned for why we're doing that session. If you can't, if an athlete can't, if Tom can't, we don't do the session. If he's too fried to concentrate, there's no point just plugging in some kind of physiological stimulus because they don't work in isolation the way I said it. We check our thinking. This is a facility we have access to in Auckland. It's indoor throws area. It's set up with cameras, not dissimilar to what you have here. So when I started out, I got a Biomechanics student, a PhD student, to run the numbers for me. This kid had never seen, he came with big raps, I sort of checked his references a little bit. He hadn't seen throws before, wasn't familiar with how it worked. I was actively seeking out someone who didn't know the event. And he ran the numbers, ran a battery of tests for me, and my questions to him were simple. What contributes to the shot going further? he spat out these. There's a report, this is one throw, and you can see all the data points down here. This is with a 6 kg shot. We threw with a 5, a 6, a 7 and an 8. With the aim being, I wanted him to help me reverse engineer what mattered to how far the implement goes. Don't tell me what your coach, oh, you didn't have a coach. Don't tell me what you learned when you were growing up. Tell me what you see. Tell me what the numbers say. Spat this out. These are all the numbers. Again, take as many pictures as you want. This is just Tom. It's going to be very different for every athlete. In fact, it's pretty unimpressive, a lot of it. But that's the shot weight, all of the metrics there. What did we learn from this? I spent a little while poring over it with him. Separation didn't matter. We measured the difference between shoulder angle and hip angle. Beyond about 13 to 15 degrees, it changed a little bit depending on the weight of the shot. It actually had a detrimental impact on release velocity. Okay, that was very contradictory to what I'd learned growing up. More was better. Get more rap, feel more tension, get the shot back, get your feet ahead. Didn't matter for Tom. Doesn't matter for Tom. The release velocity is greatly correlated to the eccentric gradient. So Tom's ability to absorb force predicates his ability to apply force. No brainer. Anyone from a jumps background or sprinting background understands this pretty well. The throws, maybe I hadn't thought about this enough. And that the path of the implement on entry must be full, i.e. the distance that the shot travels when Tom's starting his throw is more important than how fast it's travelling. Long and slow, or long and full as we call it, because we don't want to be thinking slow, we just want to be thinking full, is more important than ripping it in and compromising that performance. Okay, out of this, so what? You need to respect both sides of the force time curve. You need to be strong enough to be fluid. Tom is strong in the conventional sense. Most shot putters are. I'm not sure you can throw 22 metres without being some version of strong, but strong enough to be fluid is the caveat. And we said goodbye to standing throws. This is blatantly plagiarised. Dietz and Peterson, anyone who's read their book, Triphasic Training, will be aware of this. It's not the seminal study, but it's a useful study to read. It's a useful book. It's not expensive, and I've not done them a justice by putting black on black. You can see it on my computer, but not up here. They are referenced, so this is not my information, it's theirs. Hands up anyone who's seen this or read the book. Yeah, good?
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. Interesting study. So they did a study, it was done with shot putters, novice or collegiate level shot putters. And what they were studying was exactly this, force time curves, what does it look like, force absorption, force application, and they're interested in this V shape. The steeper we can get that V, the better. Does that kind of make sense? People, please ask if it doesn't. Yeah, so the steeper the V, so the sharper you can absorb force, the sharper you can apply it, right? So think of it like that way, whereas a really slow movement, like a maximum squat's going to have a really open V because it takes you a long time. It's not rocket science, it's just a nice, eloquent way of visualising it. Another way, force time curve. How long does it take to apply force in a max squat? Any ideas? Rob, put you on the spot. Max squat.
Squat, maximum force, generally 0.4 of a second or greater.
Yeah. Max squat, any max lifts, usually over here at maximum force development. The shot put, it's there. So I don't care how high this line goes, if you can squat 1,000,000 kilograms, you can get it goes all the way up over the roof. That's nice. That was cool. Yeah. I don't care. It doesn't matter. It only matters how high the line is here. It only matters. You can power lift and bench the universe. Who cares? It's not going to make the shot go any further. It's not rocket science, but these are the fundamentals. But starting point, again, probably being a novice coach, it's useful to have fundamentals. You might have seen this stuff. Whether or not you agree with the numbers, separate conversation. Whether or not you agree with the validity of the cohort of the athletes and what they may or may not have been doing, separate conversation. But what I like about Dr. Bondarchuk's thinking is that he's thinking about transfer. It's not about the numbers. In fact, you can take or leave that. And all of this is going to be with an N of 1 anyway, really, right? It's only ever valid as long as it's valid for that athlete. But I like the methodology. I like the philosophy of thinking about how far away from the actual competition movement can I go before I lose all transfer. Bench press, 21 metre thrower, 0.126 correlation. That's not much. That's not much at all.
Sorry, can you put to the negative numbers? Why were some of the numbers so low?
It'll make you worse. Doing that exercise will make you throw less, according to this. So if you're a 14 to 15 metre shot putter, according to this cohort, power cleans are going to make you throw less. Okay, so what? Cool story, Dale. Given all this stuff, what's actually going to make the ball go further? There's the $1 million question. So, time under tension. Time under tension. We talked about that yesterday. So things like a clean, we know there's a lot of work going on here. Basically, once it brushes past the thighs, it's passive. It's passive. So we need to think about time under tension. So we put bands on our cleans. The intention is not to put more weight on, the intention is to maximise time under tension. Now we need a certain amount of weight to feel that. But I couldn't care whether he catches it straight-legged, couldn't care whether he doesn't catch it. In fact, we've probably now gone away from Olympic lifts and we just do the movement. So we're doing hex bar jumps, same adaptation. Better time under tension, better force development. You've seen that study? Good study. Dr. B's coefficients of correlation, thinking about specificity. Specificity is important. Hard to get things that look like shot put. You need to be creative. Left-handed. Left-handed. So, the old adage of strong left side cross transfer, exactly. So anyone who's had knee surgery or any kind of unilateral trauma will be familiar with that concept. The old adage of the block left side doesn't work for Tom. It's not how he throws. Tom throws his left side open to create a stretch reflex. So we train it. Get better at it. Again, coming back to our conversation on Friday afternoon, Tom's best standing throw is about just over 15 metres. So there's no point training him like a glider. Is there a question? Someone, thought I heard something. Maybe they were just telling me to hurry up. Weight release. Training the eccentric gradient. This is stuff that was being done in the 70s, being done in the 80s. We built these ourselves. Got an engineer to build them. I'll play that again. So it's down, the weights drop off, press it through. Overloading the eccentric gradient. Because what's the limiting factor for a lot of these exercises? It's the sticking point. How far can I get past here on a maximum squat? what can I overcome at this range? So what am I doing in this range? Nothing, not much, not much, not much. Okay, I'm doing a bit here, and then once I get to here, I'm doing not much again. So how can we make it a more potent stimulus by being a bit creative?
Play it again, please.
I'll charge you. It's $1 a play.
Canadian.
We now have a machine that does this. I can't show you that.
I'll see you in March.
We will see it in March. We also have a TrackMan. You're welcome to use it.
What about with like developing athletes getting to that stage? Would you apply the same principles, or?
If we look at what Alex said earlier about developing athletes, you can give them anything and they'll get better. So we don't. There's a safety element to this and a time element. Should you do that, you've got to do one rep, put the things back on the bar, reset, do it again. Most of our developing athletes are training after school. We need a more potent, most potent stimulus for them is not this. It would still work in the same theory, but logistically, no. I don't know what this is. I've forgotten the order of my slides. Oh, again, overloading the eccentric phases in a ballistic way. Not a very impressive athlete, really. He's good at one thing. That's all he has to be good at. More interested in the intention than I am how far he goes. More interested in the transfer. I don't care if he jumps into the far wall. I don't care if he goes a metre. If that's a good enough expression with the right intention, it's doing what I need it to do. Apologies for the font. Up the top, breathing is the basis of all movement. We talked about this in Hammer. This guy here is, I worked with Mark his name's Mark McGrath. I worked with Mark at the very end of my career. I wish if I could go back and change one thing, I would have started working with Mark at the start. Mark studied a thing called the Prague School, which is about developmental central nervous system development, and he now works with big wave surfers and a couple of AFL clubs. Also worked as a consultant in Formula One and to some of the world's top tennis players. Mark is a unique individual who sees the world in a unique way, which I like. We're in Melbourne. We flew to Melbourne to work with Mark, and he came to our hotel room, and we spent about 5 hours working through understanding how Tom's breathing works and what we needed to improve. To improve intra-abdominal pressure, alignment of diaphragm and pelvic floor. If we can't control this, doesn't matter how good your squat is, how good your bench is. If you can't connect it abdominally, it's no good to us. Tom had chronic back pain growing up, and part of that was a vestige of playing cricket and rugby, and part of it was actually he had some dysfunctional breathing patterns. He had a resting breathing rate of about 11 breaths per minute, which is too high, so we got on top of that, and now we practice this daily. So just bringing his attention to how he breathes and the quality of what we do has become central. We practice this daily.
What's the name of this man again? Just out of curiosity.
Mark McGrath.
Going back to that, so part of that process you spent there was learning how to change the way Tom breathed and
Yeah, well, the first step to any change is understanding, right? So understanding what does ideal look like for us? What is ideal? Functionally ideal doesn't matter whether you're a shot putter, whether you're a race car driver, whether you're a forklift driver, but functional ideal is functional ideal. So once we've got our heads around that, there's some learning, then we start to apply it to the circumstance. So it's funny the things we learn to accept, right? We learn to accept that we're going to be asymmetrical as throwers. You're going to be better at things on one side than we do as the other, and yet we wouldn't accept that in other realms. You wouldn't accept it from a sprinter or a jumper. So there was some pervasive thinking that was hindering our ability to make the shot go further. Does that make sense? Tweaking Peaking. Cool title. This is 2015, summary of our season. Colours are just, I use that for coaching, but I just ripped it straight off our plan plugged into this. This is what our season looked like. We have a domestic season in New Zealand, which runs in February, March, and then an international season down the bottom. These are the comps we did, and this is the result. What did we learn? Beijing, this was Tom's first World Championships, and he was ready to go. He was in good shape. He threw a PB at the time. National record, 21.58, finished fourth. Finishing fourth hurts. We'd come that way, we thought we were right in the mix. In retrospect, it was probably a rite of passage, something you've got to go through. You've got to finish fourth, or you've got to finish second, or miss the final, finish 13th, whatever it is, finish 9th. But right on the bubble and makes you want to change. Tom was, his overwhelming emotion was that of disappointment. Fourth's okay, PB's okay, national record, all the rest, but yeah, no one wants to finish fourth. It hurts. So we had a chat after that and figured if you crack the shits now, if you get down on yourself, the rest of the season we're not going to learn anything. Next year's an Olympic year. You need to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, get on with it, and compete after World Champs so that we can learn from it. And he did. To his credit, he did. And what happened? He went on here and held his form. Didn't necessarily, he threw a little bit further in Zagreb, but held his form for another month. Held his form for another month. And that made me think, okay, maybe he wasn't actually in peak form here. If World Champs had been here, maybe the stimulus of World Championship at the end could be better. He can hold, he's got strength reserves to hold his form longer than I thought. Because there's always that fear of, well, they're going to run out of gas. They're going to have no more gas in the tank. We've got to do some more training, get some more stimulus in. Wasn't the case. So we changed it the next year. We time shifted our periodization, loose word, again separate conversation, time shifted it to be in the same shape, i.e. the same phase of training, a couple of weeks earlier than Rio. So season, Rio didn't go to plan, Tom was in much better shape than 21.37, finished third. Shouldn't mask the fact that he didn't throw well. He was in shape to throw a hell of a lot further than that. Should have been challenging Krauser for the gold. Again, disappointing result, masked by a medal. Same conversation afterwards. It was a little bit easier second time round because that was a metre less, more than a metre less of what we knew he was capable of. And the importance of going back and competing hard after the Olympics to give us more information, to help us learn. And what happened this year? 22, 22-20, 22-21 in his three comps afterwards. So we thought he'd be close to tapped out because we made the adjustments 2015 to 2016. Clearly not. Clearly not. So that's on us. We got it wrong again. So we changed. 2017. Domestic season, whatever. These meets here don't really matter. Nice to do, nice to compete, otherwise it's just a long block of not doing anything. Okay, this is where it gets to the pointy end. Opens up here, basically 22, 22, 22, 22, 22. And it was enough. It was enough. It's not perfect, but I defy anyone to have a perfect periodization concept. It doesn't work that way. There's emotional inputs, there's a whole lot of other stuff that we have to factor in. But that's kind of the journey from year to year of how I've tweaked a little bit. Oh, this is even worse. Sorry about that. Can you sort of see that? Top end is this. Top end is the red line. Yellow line, bottom end. This is 20 metres, 22. This axis here, weeks from pinnacle. For a long time we measured throws, but we only measured the best throws of each session, and I sort of scribbled it down so I could see progress over time. And I was sort of just seeing this squiggly line, but it couldn't tell me much. It didn't tell me much. It was sort of, oh yeah, it's doing a little bit of a step pattern, kind of expected that. Nothing really of any validity. So in 2015 I started tracking bottom end throws, what I call bottom end throws. How far are your worst throws going? I'm not talking about throws that you miss off the hand or that you step on the stop board and they go 18 metres. I'm talking about legitimate throws, good throws that feel okay but aren't your best. And I started tracking that as well. So
These are competition.
no, these are training. These are training marks.
What's on the x-axis?
What's on the x-axis here? Weeks from pinnacle. Weeks from pinnacle. 0, 26. So if we go back, this down here, weeks to pinnacle. What did I learn from that? Okay, all of a sudden I got some more data points, and what I saw was this, and this. There was a widening and a narrowing. A widening and a narrowing. What do I put this down to? In reality, all progress is non-linear. All adaptation is non-linear. It's not as simple as just throwing 1 centimetre further every day 100 times and you throw a metre further, right? There's a timing element, there's a skill element to our sport, and there's a physiological element, and this helped me resolve that. So the red line told me what Tom could do. If all things line up and you get a good throw, what could he do? The bottom line was telling me what's his timing like, what's his skill execution like. And we saw this. Horsepower would go up, stay the same, keep the variables the same, don't change the weight of the shot, don't do anything, and it'll do this. Over a month, 3 to 5 weeks, you get a narrowing of performance. You learn to calibrate, Tom learning to calibrate to his new horsepower. Change the horsepower, takes time to calibrate. This was quite powerful for us in planning. Because these periods here, at this tip of the triangle, can be frustrating. Feel fresh, I'm good to go. My good throws are going further, but I'm missing a lot too. Okay, we've seen this before. Stay with it, keep the variables the same, don't change. What does this tell me? Peaking's non-linear, no-brainer. Measuring the best throws didn't tell us the whole story. Peaking is a constantly changing equation. It's complex. Every year, I'm dealing with a slightly different beast than I dealt with the year before. Strength reserves are different. Emotional state is different. Emotional maturity is different. Patience is different. All of these things. Competition schedule is different. Travel schedule is different. It's not necessarily reducible down to 1 or 2 variables. And if in doubt, leave it out. The old adage, less is more. Any questions? Talk? Yeah.
When you increase time under tension with the rubber bands,
Yep.
what kind of things did you guys adjust as far as fatigue? Did you lower the reps? Did you take more time in between sets?
Yeah, we lowered the reps. Because every rep is
Sure.
taking more.
Yep.
Neurally, it's a lot more taxing.
So tonnage-wise, you went down?
Correct.
And then what about time frame as far as days in between, or did you pretty much?
Time frame
Is the
is
same time frame as the other?
pretty much, yeah. But the volume dropped
Yeah.
down to 50-60% of what we could do in the past. Because I don't know, it's probably an oversimplification to say you're doubling the amount of stimulus. But
did you change it as far as sets, or did you change it as far as
reps.
Use the Jimmy wear during that time frame as well?
Yeah.
To help gauge that?
Yep. Or Tendo, one we use, same thing. It's all the principle. In my experience, this is I was probably guilty of not doing this well. We're really good at making things complex. SCS, simple, complex, simple. When you learn something, it's simple to start with. When you first pick up a shot as an 8-year-old Dale throwing at the primary school sports, pick it up, throw it, that's it. See you later. You get a coach, you get videos, squad, see someone else throw, all of a sudden it becomes complex. The problem becomes complex. We've got more variables, more input. True mastery means it needs to be simple again. You need to get it back to being as simple as it was at the start. When you tied your shoelaces this morning, it was simple. But when you were 2 years old, 3 years old, 4 years old, it wasn't simple. But repetition and lack of, there wasn't anyone there telling you, Vern, you know you've got to put that bunny loop through that one and then, don't do that, no, make sure you put your thumb that way. We don't have that, it's simple, we let it be simple. So now when we're throwing, it's simple, it's got to be simple. I'm quite proud of this because I made this in Microsoft Word, so thank you. I couldn't find one that eloquently sort of described what I was thinking. Simple, complex, simple. This side of that cycle, that learning cycle, sports science. We've got a million ways to make things, to reduce them down to component parts, to tell the story. Right? And we need this. The aim is not just to stay there, the aim is to keep moving around this circle, keep getting better. We need this to help us figure it out, but we also need this. We need to be artists. I need to be an artist to help bring it back around to simplicity. Because if it's complex, the performance is going to be compromised. The handbrake's going to be on. Who is this feedback for? Does anyone recognise this man? Points if you do.
Yeah. So scrum coach.
Yeah. Do you know his name?
Mike Cron.
Mike Cron. Very good. Extra points. Mike Cron is the scrum coach for the All Blacks. Has been for 15 years. Lives in Christchurch, where I live and where we train. Mike rang me up. G'day Dale, how's it going? You may or may not have dropped a few F-bombs on the phone. Wondering if I could come down and train him. Oh yeah, no worries. Can I ask how you got my number? Oh yeah, no, we know a guy, yeah, cool. I didn't know who he was. I knew the coach, didn't know the scrum coach, but I knew some of the All Blacks coaches, didn't recognise his name. Sure enough, Google it up, Mike Cron, legendary scrum coach, 2-time world champion All Blacks, yada yada. Okay. Dale turns up in his tie to training. Nah, not really. He turns up like this, no shoes, stubbies, t-shirt. He'd be closing in on 70, I think, and he's an amazing coach, amazing man. Police officer by trade. They approached him to help and was coaching club rugby, but he had good raps as a cop, and the All Blacks approached him to come and coach the All Blacks. He was coaching junior rugby in Christchurch, and he said, no thanks. I got these kids, we've got to finish our season. The under-16s are looking pretty good, they might make the final. And legitimately turned it down. They rang him back, and they said, okay, what about at the end of the season? Could we entice you? And he said, no, I've already committed next year, I'm going to coach the under-14s. And, long story short, they transitioned him into a role, coaching with the All Blacks, had to convince him, twist his arm. And now he sees his job as travelling the world, learning. He's a professional learner. We spent 8 days this year in a dojo in Japan with sumo wrestlers. Didn't speak the language, they didn't speak English, he doesn't speak any Japanese, but he sat there in the corner, nodded, smiled, sitting cross-legged, his back was hurting, his hips were hurting, knees are hurting, but he sat there. Anyway, on the 8th day, they brought him in, got him in there, taught him, showed, and he was just studying the whole time.
Came to our volleyball lifting session.
Came to your volleyball lifting session, probably the same thing.
Yeah.
He just would have been standing there like this. Might have to excuse his language.
The girls didn't quite understand.
Yeah, they wouldn't understand him anyway. He rang me up on a Thursday, and we just finished training. Steve-o, what are you doing tomorrow? oh, we got training in the morning, but free around lunchtime. He said, oh, good. We're going to the Royal New Zealand Ballet. Are in town. We're going to go watch them rehearse. Coming along? Yeah, okay. I'll come along. Move my schedule around a bit. Go along. And we spent the whole afternoon there with the artistic director of the Royal New Zealand Ballet. And Mike's, if anyone's got a position to be able to sit there and give advice, it's Mike. But he doesn't. All he does is sit there and ask questions and think, scribble down notes and learn and distill it. He came to watch us train. He was watching Tom throw, watching my junior throwers throw. Same thing. And one of the things he said to me was this. If you ever look on TV coverage when the All Blacks are playing, look, and they cut to the coach's box, they're just sitting there like this. They don't say anything. The whole game. And to them, that means they've done their job. Their job is to make it simple again. And every bit of noise they send onto the field, via the water boy, via whatever, has to be justified. And that it's not for the coach to give that advice, it's for the team. The reason why you give advice is for enhancement of performance. How often have we seen coaches at major championships over-coaching? I'm standing on the front row of the fence, in my team jacket, cameras are on me, after every jump, come to the fence, come to the fence, come to the fence. After every jump, every throw. Who's that for? Is it to help the athlete? Or is it so that the coach gets seen? I'm the coach of this athlete. Best coaches know when to shut up. Meditations and breathing's become an integral part of what we did. I said that before. This is the last 7 minutes before we went into the call room in London. Tom does a breathing exercise, puts his headphones in, he's got an app that talks to him and talks him through becoming present, self-awareness, presence in the moment. My job is to be the bodyguard and to count, thank you, and to make sure he's not interrupted. We did this exercise. Go out to the audience, describe your ultimate adversary. What's the kind of competitor that you would not want to compete against? Focus. Other words? What do they look like? What do they sound like? How do they act? What are their behaviours?
Confident.
Confident.
Yeah? Supreme being, sorry. Calm. We did this exercise, came up with these. They're adaptable. They don't get flustered. They don't get, if it's raining, they're fine. If the circle's crappy, they're fine. They deal with it. They're calm. They're steely. Steely meaning they want it, but they want it inside. They're driven. They're self-aware. They can solve problems themselves and recognise their own behaviour and modify it accordingly. They don't need to be micromanaged by a team of others. And they walk towards the moment rather than walking away from the moment. They want, you've got, someone responds, you're the last thrower in round 6 or in qualifying, you fouled your first 2 throws, you put them into the cage. Your ultimate adversary wants that last throw. They want to be there. Here I go. I'm going to prove it. This is me. This is what I love. This is my moment. It's not something I have to tolerate. It's something I want. Simple equation from there. How do we become that guy? How do we train it so that we're that guy? Keep going through. Don't want to hold it much. Does anyone recognise where this is? You should. Bedford. So we threw at the English Championships in Royal Bedford. Our intention for this competition was one good throw. First round. Lay it down, one good throw. That's it. This is our last competition before World Champs. Gone through 22.06, first round. Why do we train that? Why is that our intention? We know that if you can get to a good standard quickly and get to it early in a competition, it sets you up. We know that in qualifying, if you can qualify on the first round, Tom did, actually threw his season's best in qualifying, 22.14, back on the bus. You guys fight it out for the next 2 rounds, see you tomorrow. Hit his intention for that meet. I actually don't even remember what he threw for the rest of the rounds. We didn't care. Be free, and you compete. None of that. Make it simple. The best time that Tom's done this was at World Indoors last year. We had a training session. There was no way Tom was going to lose that comp. No way. His worst throws the day before, he talked about calibrating training with that. Every throw was within about a 15 centimetre band. And the only thing that was going to mess it up for us is if we got in the way of it. So we just had to be free and throw, just express. And he put together, I think statistically, it's the best ever indoor series of throws that's ever been thrown. But if you ask us to describe it, if you ask us to talk you through it, couldn't tell you. Don't remember it. Just throwing. Like 8-year-old Dale or 8-year-old Tom. I'm going to keep going. Is that okay? Yeah. Got 2 minutes left, but I want to fly through these. Again, sorry about the colours. It's not so bad on my laptop. I'll learn. It's my learning for today. Black background, colour. Does anyone know what this is? It is a pie chart. Correct. Well done. Thanks, Alison. This is this. The bottom axis, I'm sorry, red is they've dropped out. Yellow, low usage. Purple, active. Drop out, low usage, active. Frequency of gym attendance for members in the UK, 6 months after joining a gym. Probably not surprising. Probably not. From the UK Personal Trainers Association. This would be the same in New Zealand, probably the same in America, around the world. For the record, low usage is defined as less than once a fortnight attending. So they studied why. What is it that leads to this? And what they found out was that the yellow and the red, those who didn't attend, for them going to the gym was a transaction. It was something they had to do to get the result. They wanted to feel better, they wanted to maybe lose some weight, they wanted to look better, they wanted to do whatever, but going to the gym was just a transaction they had to do to deal with, put up with, for that long-term outcome. The purple, they enjoy going to the gym. Maybe their friends are there. Maybe they find some little challenge in it, day to day. I love seeing if I can do one more rep than I did last time. I just like the freedom of the headspace after work, just going and being primal for a while. I like to just put my music on and do it. These guys enjoy the process. For these guys, it's transactional. For us, for me as a coach, we need to make it this. So we have fun. This is the morning of the World Championship final. We went down to the park and we're throwing around our bouncy ball just to have fun, loosen up, get some fresh air, roll around and make sure we're enjoying the opportunity to be in London, a lovely part of the world. It was a sunny day in London, pretty rare. This is just above the Tower of London. While the marathon was going on, we went down and came up with a game where I had to do a thing and then Tom had to do a thing, and if he couldn't do it, he got a point, and the loser got the ball thrown at him. Tom lost. So we try to keep the fun in it, because you throw further when you're having fun. That sort of brings me to the end. What's next? What's on the horizon for us? And for me, where am I thinking the next challenge is going to be? This is one I've been thinking about for a while. The concept of gradient over magnitude. Rather than someone being a good thrower or a bad thrower, or a good coach or a bad coach, I don't care where they're at on this axis. I only care about, are they getting better? Are they getting better? So can I change my language? Can I change my training structure, my philosophy to align with this, so that it doesn't matter if you're a 22 metre thrower, a 23 metre thrower, or a 12 metre thrower, are you getting better? Because I feel like if we can do that, if I can figure that out and what that looks like, it's going to be an advantage for us. Mike Cron's mantra, learning is my performance. That's my job. As a coach, this is what I should get assessed on. Have I evolved? Am I better? Am I going to coach 50 years or 1 year 50 times? And it's important to me to stay true to the art. Athletes, retrieve your own implements. Wash the towels. Build your own throwing circle. Thank the officials after your event. Thank other coaches. Come to occasions like this when you get invited. Even if it's 30 hours of travel for 2 days. What an opportunity, right? Give back to the sport. Stay true to your craft and respect it. If we don't respect throwing, then no one else will. Especially in our little corner of the world, there's just not enough people. And there's always more tape. You can't beat our event. Which is one of the cool things about it. It's just an ongoing problem to solve. Thank you for listening. There are my contact details. Please feel free to reach out. I love chatting and learning. Thanks again to the organisers for having me over. Are there any questions before we finish? Yay, nay. Thanks for putting up with me. Be around at lunch if you want to have a chat. Business card, contact details, we'll go from there. And enjoy the rest of the afternoon. Thanks, guys.